Welcome back, guys. So, I guess it's time to come clean. Um, my older videos, I was watching them and I did not know anything about abrasives and steel back then. So, there may have been some misinformation mixed in there, and I apologize. I got a lot of my information from Ricky Tran or Perfection. He's not, he's a knife enthusiast and he collects sharpening stones and all that stuff, but he's coming from it just from a consumer standpoint, and sometimes doesn't really understand the full picture. But yeah, I just wanted to go ahead and get that out of the way. I noticed on my last video, I immediately got a dislike, thumbs down, and I reckon it's either the way I present the video, how it was filmed, and the quality was 360p. So I'm sure somebody out there was like, all right, I see grainy potato can, fuck that. So with that out the way, speaking of things I've gotten flack about before is the way that I've learned how to sharpen convex knives. Now, I am always willing to admit whenever I'm wrong about something, and in this case, I've always heard people suggest using like a mouse pad and sandpaper, from the Bark River community specifically, and I'm sure that works fantastic if you know what you're doing. Now, if you don't have a lot of experience, I can see that being an issue. With rolling your apex, having so much give in it, and that's why we see like those kits with leather underneath or rubber that doesn't have a lot of give, and you can really get that full height grind that you're trying to achieve. Because on your convex knives, if you just sharpen this bit here, you're going to end up with a V grind, and you're going to make the knife more obtuse over time. Now, I've thinned this knife pretty dramatically over time, having sharpened it on stones for so long, but I just recently tried using sandpaper, and to my surprise, it worked extremely well. And I think I prefer it actually, because whenever you're sharpening with stones, you just get a lot of flat grind marks and troughs and things like that, and it just looks ugly. And I'll go ahead and say that with a stone, I can get a much sharper edge because I'm not as experienced with sandpaper yet. So I'm sure I could do this by using a something more firm, but with what I have, this works just fine. You'll see my results. But for now, I'll show you kind of what happens whenever you use sandpaper. Usually your etchings are going to get ground up, and I'm not sure if Bark River will put those back on there, but I could care less, or I couldn't care less, because this knife is for use. I don't really care about it looking pretty. I just want it to work. And this is about, I think this is a 2500 grit finish on here right now. I've used it quite a bit since I last sharpened it, so it does need a touch up. So we're going to take it back to the 800 grit sandpaper and just bring the apex back up, and I'll show you what I'm using for this. So this is just your run-of-the-mill drywall sander. If you're in the axe community, I'm sure you've heard of the Rooster Method, which was originally called the Scary Sharp Method. He's kind of, well, not by his own volition, but other people have coined it the Rooster Method. basically you just clamp down a piece of sandpaper on one of these, and on an axe you just do this kind of motion, and it does leave a really nice finish, but it does cause the bevel to get more obtuse much quicker than it would if you're using a file or stones. Now, let's just jump right into this, and I'll show you how effective this is. We're gonna go ahead and do a paper cutting test right now just to see where the knife is. I'm sure it's fine. I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like even after convex knives get really dull, their working edge just sticks around. Well, that's actually really sharp as it is. It probably won't whittle hair or anything, which is useless, to be honest, but I just want to start putting out more content for you guys, and this will be a quick one, so hopefully I can get it out in better quality. So, alright, I'll shut up and we'll get to sharpening. Kill the edge. Okay, so basically what I do, I just hold it in my hand like this, and I'm holding the knife pretty much flat on this. You're going to see how the paper wants to curl back up over, and that's where you risk rolling your apex with this. So you have to kind of do this by feel, trial and error. So let's just get going. Starting out flat. I'm just doing this to take steel off behind the edge. I'm not doing anything special towards the tip. I'm just bringing it straight back because I want to just get as straight of a satin finish as I possibly can. It doesn't take much. I've actually got a little bit of a burr started right now. That finish looks really good on there. This is probably the easiest and cheapest way to sharpen your convex knives, in my opinion, but it is one of the more difficult ways, and I think you need to have a good understanding of sharpening before you go into this. So what I'm going to do is just tilt the knife ever so slightly, just so I can hit that apex and get an even burr started across the entire bevel. Only moved it up a couple of degrees, if that. Because like I said, I was already hitting the primary edge. The important part is that we're creating a burr, and so we can create the apex. Still not quite there, but it's looking good. Lifting it up just a little bit more. I'm sure you guys have seen this knife before. This is my Bark River Santos collaboration with Joe Louis Knives. It's my favorite outdoors knife as of right now. I'm sure there's others out there that I really enjoy. Okay, so yeah, that slight variation in my angle dropped it well enough to where I got the entire edge. So it just gives you kind of that slack belt convex that everybody talks about. No micro bevel to speak of. It just looks tidy. Alright, let's get the second side done. And typically what I do, this is an 800 grit piece of sandpaper, is I just switch to the other side because you're going to lose aggression. And again, holding it flat at first. So one of the downsides to this is you don't get the same burr reduction that you can get with a stone by doing edge leading strokes. So I'm just going to lightly pull the knife back and just try to work that burr back and forth. This is where experience really comes into play. Okay, and now right here, I'm just kind of lifting up a little bit whenever I get to the tip of the knife, and I'm just going to trade back and forth. Normally, I would be more detail-oriented about this, but this is the quick and dirty version. Let's see where we're at with this. Feeling a little bit of burr on this side. You want to try to get as much of it off as you can before you go over to the strop. Right now I'm basically just dropping off that burr. Okay, there's far less than there was before, but there is some remaining. I'm going to use my hard felt strop, or a hard felt block from Chef Knives to Go. Invaluable little piece of equipment, even though you can do this with leather or cork. I mean, with wood or cork, excuse me. Okay. Alright, let's hit it with a strop. I'm going to start out with Bark River Black, just because this is more of a bigger bird than I'm really happy with, but I don't really use Bark River Black anymore because I've noticed it does cause some minor microchipping on A2 especially. That's all it took right there. And I'm not lifting the knife way up for this. I'm just doing it to where I can't really see any light coming out from under that bevel. Or shadow, rather. Wicked sharp already. Wipe off this black compound and go to the white. Now once I get to the white, I'm going to go ahead and hit the whole bevel just to smooth everything out, getting it looking nice and pretty. Be careful and try to keep it as flat as possible, and try not to cut your strop if you can help it. See, that looks really damn good already. I'm going to leave it right there. Okay. Burr is gone. Now, see if it'll cut. Yeah. Well, there you have it, guys. Hope that was helpful, and thanks for watching. Later.